Hey, hi everyone. I would love to introduce our next speaker, Megan Cunningham. She's the CEO and founder of Magnet Media Inc. Megan Cunningham founded Magnet Media as a pioneer in brand storytelling. Magnet's mission is to tell stories that matter. As a strategic studio, they use storytelling and data to drive measurable outcomes from brands and their clients are like amazing. They include Google, Adobe, Chase, Goldman Sachs, Airbnb, HarperCollins, IBM, CitiGroup, Carbon, the TED Talks, Politico, BlackRock, TIA, YouTube, National Geo Kids, MIT Tech Press, and way more. So you can see the kind of list they have. And as an industry leader, Megan has been featured in the New York Times, CNN Business, the Huffington Post, and Forbes. She's spoken at the Sundance Film Festival, the Tribeca Film Institute, the Wharton School of Business, the New York University Stern School of Business, CES, NAB, SXSW, and was a keynote speaker at the NewTV Kongress in Hamburg, Germany, and the Stareable Festival 2019 in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. She was recognized by Cynopsis as a top woman in digital and is author of The Art of the Documentary, now in its second edition. From its inception, Magnet Media has been dedicated to diversity and inclusion in the media industry. Megan mentors two groups, female documentary directors via Chicken and Egg Pictures and underrepresented startup founders through both Techstars and the Female Founders Collective, Project Entrepreneur. So Megan has also served as a mentor at the MacArthur Institute's Producers Institute at the Bay Area Video Coalition and been a board member of both Global Giving and New York Women in Film and TV, as well as a NYWFT Power Player. She completed the Punch Salzburg Fellowship at the Columbia School of Journalism and is a graduate of Swarthmore College. She is also a founding partner of Marketers That Matter, the Forbes Agency Council, and is a founding member of Chief. So hi, Megan. Such a long, you've got a wonderful portfolio there. Thank you so much for taking the time to come to the summit.
Vinodh, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And I just want to thank you for pulling all these incredible speakers together. I'm going to enjoy the other sessions as well and hopefully learn a lot.
Sure. Thank you so much. So how are things with you? How are things affecting your business in terms of COVID, and how is it affecting life in general, where you live?
Yes. Well, thank you for asking. I feel very saddened by what's happening, obviously, globally right now. And I think that overcoming that is a daily challenge, I think, as a leader. But I do believe that this is a moment where leadership is required every day. And so we have to, get over our own, I think, emotional hurdles and hopefully engage in teamwork and really thinking carefully about what our mission is. As you mentioned at the start, our mission is telling stories that matter. And I think there are more stories being told right now that matter than really perhaps at any other time in history. So that piece is a bit of a silver lining as social media is at an all-time high in terms of consumption. And I feel that there is a real strength, not in all of it, but in some of it, in terms of the authenticity of the stories and the engagement levels and people really hearing each other and seeing each other in ways they haven't before.
That's true. That's really nice to hear. So do you want to share your presentation? I think everybody's eager to kind of see it.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks for the opportunity. So I'll just share my screen here for a moment. See if we can move over to this and just please tell me if you can see the presentation.
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Terrific. Excellent. So as Vinodh said, I am the CEO and founder of Magnet Media, but really I'm here as a representative of a truly incredible team. So we are thrilled to introduce this idea of modern growth hacking. I think that growth hacking is something that really became popular just in the last 5 or 6 years in Silicon Valley initially. There's a presentation that Andrew Chen gives where he shows that there was 0 searches for the words growth hacking at one point nearly a decade ago. And that slowly, as he and Sean Ellis and other team members there popularized this idea of the fact that you could really do more with performance marketing and branding combined than you could by separating those two functions. And then all of a sudden growth hacking became sort of a very, consistent staple in every CMO's toolkit. So at the same time, I think there's a modernization of the term growth hacking that has been recently introduced into the discipline of marketing. And so as a student of marketing myself, I really love to follow these trends and understand them. And so we brought together some of our learnings around a process that's proven that combines data and storytelling to acquire customers efficiently. So this is a presentation on the best of B2B storytelling, but specifically focused on modern growth hacking. And so just as a way of introduction, as Vinodh said, that we are a strategic studio at Magnet Media, and that means that we believe using storytelling and data is the best way to drive business results. We have a think, make, reach approach. So we have a strategic practice, a full service content production studio, and also distribution and reporting. And I think that connective tissue between those three is really what makes our process unique. We like to think of our process as starting with the business goals, moving to the strategy, looking into the planning and of the content and development. Often we get calls for, can you just make me an explainer video, or, I have a customer story, like I need, or I need an ebook, just on the make side. And what we always try to do is, even if there's a tight deadline, take a step back, understand what's the real business goal here. Is it customer acquisition? Is it retention? Is it lifetime value, or is it just, volume of customers, right? The nuances, I think, in the business goal definition are really key to being successful at a sustainable marketing effort. Then we move into the creation and the production part, which is always fun. And in terms of reach, distribution, amplification, measurement, and optimization. And so our clients, obviously they run the gamut from media and entertainment to technology and financial services. And they've really been at the forefront of this change with growth hacking. And so we're going to focus today on just the B2B segment, which is a big part of our customer base. But these are the types of flavors of think, make, reach that we have put together. And you'll notice, especially you asked the question about COVID, I think that, sadly, a lot of the experiential opportunities or live pop-ups or sponsorships of things like the US Open are no longer possible right now. And so a lot of that budget is being redirected in the space of virtual events or into podcasting or things that can be produced remotely and engaging an audience virtually. So I think this is a really interesting time for marketers because you have a chance to really dive in to what a digital, mobile, social strategy looks like in a way that you never have had before. You've always been having those dollars competing with other seven-figure investments that usually take up all your time because they're so visible, right? If you're going to be in a place like the PGA or something, that's just a nationally broadcast event, and that's going to take up everybody's time. Whereas today, you don't have those distractions, and I think that it's benefited digital media. And so one thing I just wanted to note for after our session is that for anyone who's interested in having a private consultation, we have the State of the Story, which is our trends report. We also produce monthly events and workshops, and we'd love to invite you to attend. And you can just email me after the fact if you'd like to see any of those private sessions. Okay, so getting into growth hacking, we have a 4-step process here that is really exciting. It's a little detailed, and especially for a Monday. So I wanted to just note that I will take you through each of these 4 steps, but don't feel like you have to master it all in the first wave. This is something that has been distilled from a lot of conversations with professional growth hackers. Sean Ellis's book was a great inspiration for what they did, he and his team at Dropbox, when they didn't have cloud was not a term that people were searching on at the time because they were ahead of the curve. And so he had to find another way besides a typical acquisition of really understanding where could they break out of just the Silicon Valley bubble and get a global audience. And so this was a system that was really invented out of necessity because a lot of startups don't have the luxury of buying terms that are known, like best credit card, or, something that's already a kind of a mature category. These are innovators who are inventing new terms and redefining what business could look like. And so they've had to be very scrappy and very thoughtful at the same time about their strategies. So from left to right, our Think, Make, Reach system is sort of, I would say, layered on to the growth hacking process here. So if you think about first the customer journey and the content strategy, that's where we start. Often as marketers, we're thinking about ourselves and thinking, okay, what's our go-to-market strategy? How are we going to show up, right? It's always about us, us, us. And I think this is flipping the script a little bit and saying, okay, what is the customer really looking for? How, think about it almost like a great product marketer would. Who are they? What problem are we solving? What are they conceiving of? And I'll go back to the earlier slide for a second, which was around virtual event solutions. We think of it as virtual events or live streaming or, interactive experiences, right? We're the marketers. We want to make it sexy. But if you look at the volume of searches, all of those words are very, very low in comparison to the traditional word webinar. And so, of course, I don't want to think of what we're producing as a webinar. That sounds, 1989, right? But the fact is that how in the mind of the customer, if I really think about their journey, they're still, caught in language that may be appropriate. And so as we put our own series together, we use the word world-class webinars as we were defining our event so that we would still show up in those searches. So the customer journey is really important. The content strategy is very correlated, so we sort of combine those into one step. And we'll go into each of these in a minute, but I just wanted to kind of give you some highlights. The second is taken from Atif Awan at LinkedIn. In the earliest days of LinkedIn, they used growth hacking, and they did this user channel research, which is pretty fascinating. And it's a great way to just sort of matrix out how to prioritize which channel you're going to make an investment in first, because nobody can be everywhere, right? No one has an infinite budget, unfortunately. And I would love to be on TikTok and YouTube and Pinterest and AdWords and everything, right? But I think it's going to be diminishing returns if you don't have some sense of prioritization. You can always experiment, but you need to really double down and focus on those priority channels. So this is a way to determine that. And then step 3 is around your story format and channel prioritization. So again, keeping in mind, okay, now that we have a user channel research, we're now going to apply that to our own case. And this came out of Brian Balfour's work at HubSpot. And he did a great job at really thinking through, okay, not every channel works the same way. So if you have a great Instagram campaign using influencers that are, posting and tagging each other and sharing in their stories, all of those people may or may not have a following on YouTube, right? So you can't give them the same content and expect the same results. Some people are not on YouTube at all, who are huge on Instagram. So you really need to think through how you're adapting your own story format to the channel once you've done that prioritization work. And then in the 4th step, we think about customer acquisition roadmap and the pilot investment. So now it's time to roll up our sleeves, not having analysis paralysis of just, charts and graphs and numbers, but really get going. Let's try something out, because until you have real data, real world data, all of your assumptions are just that. They're just a theory. And until you start to prioritize, okay, we're going to test out this hypothesis and see if it works. And tests can be very small, but to get going on a test is really the key. And that's where the real learning begins. So hopefully these 4 steps make sense. And these are the stages of engaging clients that will inform your financial model and help you to really scale rapidly and profitably. So I'm going to dive deep now, just one click deeper into each of these stages. And so beginning with the customer journey, we think of this really as 5 stages, from awareness to engagement, to consideration, to purchase, and then hopefully to evangelize, right? And all of these are critical. If you look at any great brand that's grown quickly, they don't stop at purchase, right? They're not just about lead gen and hopefully we have thousands of leads every day and we're going to celebrate now, we're going to go public, right? You have to convert them at every one of these stages. And so if you think about those, that's a lot of touch points. It's 6 different touch points where you're really needing to message the client and meet them where they are. In B2B, these are very high stakes communications, right? These are large dollar value decisions. This is not a, oh yeah, I'll spend, $5 a month on this app, right? That's not a B2B engagement. This is something where you might be asking for 5, 6, or even 7-figure commitments. And so those touch points are very sensitive. And if you turn someone off by not thinking through how you're delivering your story, you could really jeopardize the success of a campaign. And on the flip side, if you tell your story effectively, you have 6 engagement points to really woo someone, right? This is not just a one and done, I'm gonna blast an email and hopefully, we'll hit it big, right? This is a consistent conversation that you're having. It's a nurturing process where hopefully this process aligns with everything else that the company is doing from a marketing and customer service perspective. So at the next stage, we're going to go into the user channel research where you can really, as I mentioned, prioritize the use of the story formats, right, to influence customer decisions. And we'll get into more specifics, but I just wanted to say that I think that the customer journey is so critical, and rarely is this examined very carefully, I think, in B2B environments, right? Do these 5 stages map, for example, to your CRM, right? Is the way in which you're setting up your marketing programs mirrored in your sales process? Sometimes there's a disconnect. And I think if those 2 processes are not aligned and you're not thinking about, okay, your CMO and your CRO have to be in lockstep, right? And thinking about these processes the same way, so that if it's a probability of sale closing, for example, awareness might be 5%. Engagement might be 20% if you're in a CRM environment, right? And so as the deal size is one thing, but also just knowing where you stand in terms of touch points with your client, that can really help you get a greater sense of accuracy in your forecasting and a better sense of information that comes back to your marketing team and showing where there's real traction. So we use those insights to identify where customers are in their journey and what information is relevant in your story so you can advance them towards your product. And then there's different ways to develop content strategy, of course, but these are all going to be driven by customer insights. And so this is just one example that we used here, but this content for this audience that we looked at in this one example needed to be, after doing a big insights effort, it showed that the content needed to be shareable, interactive, personalized, and based on analytics. And so I won't go into all the details of this one engagement, but it was a financial services launch. And the interesting thing here was that they had tried experiments earlier with 1 or 2 of these dynamics, but they weren't all 4 being brought into the campaign. And so they really missed the mark early on. They thought, oh, maybe we can't market effectively. Maybe we don't have the right, story to tell. But once they checked this list off and said, okay, we need to make it not only shareable, but also personalized, not only interactive, but also based on analytics, then they really hit their stride and they started to see that organic viral flywheel take off. So step 2 is user channel research. And I think that, here we see there's different dimensions to every channel, and looking at them analytically is really important. So just in isolation, right? If you're looking at AdWords versus, let's say, YouTube, right? Where can I make my best investment right now? Or where do I want to prioritize? You want to score each of these channels along these 6 dimensions. So what's the minimum spend required on a per test level, right? Might not be New York Times ad, right? That might not be the minimum spend that you can tolerate right now. Maybe down the road, your CEO would love that. But to get started, you might need to use something that's a little scrappier and more flexible. Control, right? Talking about flexibility. Is this channel something that we can turn up or down? And is there an ability to pause it or change it? It's very important, especially as you're becoming more and more agile with your marketing. Output time. This is a huge hot button issue for so many agencies, right? Clients want to see the report. They went live with the campaign. How we doing, right? How we doing? How we doing? So many of these channels do provide tremendous visibility, but sometimes there's a window of 48 to 72 hours where all the algorithm is being, sort of the campaign's live, but it's not been, distributed effectively yet. It hasn't been picked up by all the dimensions of the platform. And so setting expectations around that output time is key. I think the old days of saying, oh, we're going to give you a bi-monthly report or something, those days are gone. So we do need to operate more quickly, but a question of thinking about output time and being clear with your client or with your partners internally on those results is important. Similarly, targeting. There are certain targeting abilities right now that are almost like magic, right? I mean, my phone clearly listens to me, right? When I'm having a conversation with someone at the dinner table, I start to see those ads pop up in almost every social app. And so it's clearly something that all of the channels are using, our mobile and social data. But in order to access those targeting principles as a marketer, sometimes there's a big price to pay in order to get access to a lot of the specificity. So people know within your organization sometimes that targeting is possible, and yet they don't really understand the cost implications. So making sure that that's key is also incredibly important. And then input time. How long does it take to get all the creative, the written piece, the visuals, the landing page, linking it to the CRM, tracking URLs effectively, and then the scale. So audience size that's relative to your target is also key. In B2B, some of these audience sizes can be fairly small, right? There may be a very, very valuable audience. It's only 15,000 people globally. In order to reach them, that requires a very different strategy than something that's open to tens of millions of people. And so thinking through your total addressable audience and how are you going to reach them efficiently, and looking at all 6 of these dimensions as you score on your channels is really important. And so this is just one example of a scorecard that we created. And in this example that I showed earlier, both SEO and social were the 2 winners. And you can see that we took all 6 of those dimensions from the earlier slide: cost, input time, output time, targeting, control, and scale, and we created a sum. And so on the left-hand side, the lower score wins, and on the right-hand side, the higher score wins, right? So it makes sense, but just to walk you through that, you want a lower cost, a lower input time, a lower output time, but you want a higher targeting, higher control, and higher scale. So we look at those 2 things. Now you have an understanding of how to prioritize which channel works depending on your product. This answer will be different every time. The third step is story format prioritization. And I love this because I think this is the place where we all get to be creative and produce assets that are going to convert, right? So here's where we really pull in our creative thinkers on the storytelling side and look at those channels and really identify what is going to work given the channel that we've now chosen. So something, that's relevant from an SEO driven strategy of, might be great articles and incredibly well-written blogs. Those are not going to be so successful if you're choosing to, again, operate from a podcasting perspective, right? So you really want to think about what is the content and the story format that makes sense for the channel that you've chosen. And then in the customer acquisition roadmap, here is, again, I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. The earlier stage that we went through with that customer journey of 5 stages from awareness all the way through to evangelize. And this is how we think about this from a campaign execution perspective. So we want to do, the pre-launch piece, which is the first 3 steps that we just went through, right? Customer journey, the channel prioritization, channel market research, and then the story format prioritization. So those 3 steps take place pre-launch. And then once you launch, you're looking at a 3-phase process where you establish a baseline of data, maximize that spend within that window, right? And really expand the creative with immediate top performers. So once you're seeing those results, you really want to be quick about filtering through in an actively spending mode, but really looking at, okay, these words are not getting clicked on, or they're not converting at all, and they're expensive. Let's take those out and get more efficient, right? Let's look at, again, if there's video targeting that you're doing or audience targeting, that piece needs to be incorporated into your thinking as you move forward with the presentation. Excuse me, just one second here. So sorry, just moved over to the other slide. Apologies for that. In phase 2, we look at optimizing across all the levers. So to reach our target KPI ranges, you may underspend in certain areas, and then focus will shift to exclusively high performing side. So this is all about a nimble and agile process so that you get the biggest ROI. And then phase 3 is about maximizing scale. Now that we know where we're going to see a great return, how much of that traffic that's really rich and that's really performing well can we afford, right? And this may be, again, if it's social, it may be through influencers. If it's through AdWords, it may be through selecting the right terms and the right landing page, the right sequence. So all of this is subject to change depending on which channel you've prioritized, but you get the general idea. We're going to do this in a very methodical way and a thoughtful way so that we see the best results. And this is just where it looks like from a customer acquisition perspective, moving through awareness, engagement, and conversion. The purpose of this pilot is really to test your hypothesis. So, we believe that this channel is a priority, and we believe that these stories are the right formats. But we don't know until we're in market. So it's all theoretical, and then we start to get data, and then we may need to tweak something. Like I said earlier, right? Virtual events, we knew were going to be hot because everyone was canceling their physical events. But what we didn't know was what was the right term to use when we were advertising the fact that we had a virtual event production service, right? It was clearly webinar needed to be in there because that was a term that everyone was searching on, even though that wasn't how we were thinking about the service. So just in summary, the key takeaways here are that delivering different content and story formats to drive them through their customer journey is really key. And as long as you're building that around insights, you're going to see success. The second is using channel scoring criteria will really help you determine how you can reach your specific customers most efficiently, because there's no one size fits all, right? I know everyone in our industry is trend driven, and all of a sudden it's TikTok and forget about all the other social channels, right? Which I love TikTok, so don't knock TikTok. but I'll tell you that, what's interesting to me is that as the marketers somehow leave one platform and move to the next that's hot and sexy, a lot of times there's greater efficiency in some of those prior platforms because there's less people spending all of their available experimental budget on it. The third is that prioritizing the production of creative assets based on stories and channels identified in the think phase of the think, make, reach is really key. So we're optimizing creative for necessary formats here based on those selected channels. And then the fourth is running a pilot to test your hypothesis around channel priority and story formats is really the key to getting real data and informing your larger campaign. At that point, you're optimizing, and then you're going to get even greater efficiency. So let's just say you have a target acquisition of $500 a lead, if in the hypothesis section you start off and it's $800 and then it's $700 and then it's $650 and then it's $640 and whatever, and you haven't quite hit the $500 yet, that's okay, because keep in mind, you're absorbing the cost of those earlier investments. And what you need to look at is, okay, now that we know these were all these inefficient places that we were spending early on because we had to find out, now we know here's where we're at. Is this a sustainable cost? Can we keep to that cost per lead that we've looked at from the start moving forward? And if so, then you should scale. So with that, I just wanted to leave you with a few of our best of B2B storytelling. And these are different stories that we've had the great pleasure of being commissioned to produce and to distribute on behalf of our clients. Greenhouse is a fast-growing startup that makes the world better at hiring. They are an amazing company, and the Greenhouse inclusion videos are some of our proudest moments. Those are available on our site. JP Morgan commissioned a Treasury Services Innovation Series with us, and this really, I think, is as fascinating as any TV show, especially if you look at, CNBC or Bloomberg, if you're into that kind of programming. And these are truly cutting edge innovators, and they are captured in a non-talking head style way. It's conversational and it's dynamic, and you're learning about terms that we all throw around like AI or machine learning, but from real experts in the financial services industry. And then Carbon was a company that is a company that does digital manufacturing platform. And so this is really reinventing what 3D printing is. And they have changed the game for the NFL with their helmet technology, really focusing on human performance and protection. And we did an incredible campaign with them. It was an honor to work with them around the Riddell helmet launch, where there was all these different dimensions very similar to the growth hacking that I just went through. There was an ebook and a video and a big investment in sort of the launch itself, all around the Super Bowl. And they really won YouTube that week. Interestingly, this is a startup that at the time, was really just on the rise, but sort of below the radar of the national mainstream. And today they're a unicorn startup that's raised close to $1 billion in investment and is led by an incredible CEO, Ellen Kullman. So that's it for today. I'm Megan Cunningham, and please do reach out if there's any questions. This is really a pleasure to share with you some of our insights around B2B storytelling and modern growth hacking.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan, for your time here. And it was really an amazing presentation. And there were a lot of insights. I think you've given a lot of formats as well that people can follow. And as you said rightly, I think a lot of people make the mistake of not following that process and, kind of starting with some campaign and, they kind of get tensed as soon as the cost per lead goes high and they don't really wait for the optimization to kick in. So it's really a good framework that you've given. And I just wanted to know, what would be the best way for people to reach out to you just in case they need? And you said about that, the series that you're running, and what would be the best way? Can I send the link to the audience from your end?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you reach out to me there, that's a great way to start. And some of your other speakers have done that already, which has been great. It's an incredible community. And you can also email me, mc@magnetmediafilms.com. I'm available and I'd love to chat with you if you're interested in learning more.
Great. That's great. And how do people get access to your private sessions that you were talking earlier in the presentation?
Yes, thank you. So on our site, there's a top level section called the State of the Story. That is our annual trends presentation that we put together a lot of this information on where marketing is going, right? It's always changing. So where is marketing going? And the State of the Story is an annual trends report, but it's also a monthly event series that we produce. And so if you sign up there, you'll be invited into our public events. And you can certainly also be in touch with us via that channel to request a private session with you at your company.
That would be great. So thank you so much, Megan, again for your time. It was a pleasure having you in the summit.
I appreciate the opportunity, Vinodh, and good luck with the rest of your summits. It looks like an amazing lineup. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.